Today I want to show you 3 simple technical exercises you can do on a piano to work your way up to Baroque improvisation. In particular, these exercises are designed to train the fingers both in strength and flexibility, to avoid thinking too much and problems with fingers clumping together and sticking together. And we'll need this kind of worrylessness when we go to survey what I call mechanical mode of improvisation, which is just using simple patterns but repeated over and over, typically built over things like harmonic circles. So something like this. For instance, you don't want your fingers to be sticking, or you don't want to think too much because it's supposed to be simple, right? So 3 exercises. The first one is the most important. If you have only a little time, view this one. The other 2 are variations, less important. So the first exercise is all about working on your touch. So your touch, your attack. In Baroque music, I think it's very important that we develop some sort of strong attack to have well-defined notes. You don't want your notes to be kind of real numbered quantities. You don't want your notes to belong to a continuous set. So this is what I would call the example of a continuous set, because you worry about dynamics, you worry about stuff like this. It's good to be able to do this if you want, but to practice Baroque music, I think you should be able to do right, something really precise where the notes are defined and they have equal length, a bit like a harpsichord, because I think it's only good. It's not only good from a stylistic point of view. It can help you sound better if you do this, not always, but in some places. But also it's really helpful, strangely, for improvisation, because I think your brain has to think about less stuff. If you think about dynamics, it does occupy a certain portion of your working mind, and so maybe just by playing notes that are very strict, like this, very simple in their style, it helps you focus on what is important. So, how do you practice this? Well, you're going to take a scale, for instance, C major, right? And you don't have to take, okay, this is not a major scale. You don't have to take a more complicated scale. Just take an easy one at first. And, oh my God, what is happening outside? Anyways, I don't know, I don't want to know. Just one hand, and you practice attacking. So, first, very slow. Exaggerate the attack of every note. So this might depend on your physical keyboard. If it's a computerized keyboard, you can also work on this, because it's not only about the physical attack, it's also about your intention. So you need to work on, yes, the physical thing. So, but even if you have even a fully digital instrument where you improvise on a computer keyboard, and you can play on a computer, if you have a VST, right, you can play on a computer keyboard. Even this, you can attack, and of course it's not going to be detected, but the intention of maybe cutting each note before the next one and not leaving them to hang together will give you this feeling of attack. And so you start slow, and maybe and slowly. Even here, you see, you don't want things to clump. No, you want. You want everything to be precise in 2 ways. So the clumpings, there are 2 kind of clumpings. One is the rhythmic clumping. The rhythmic clumping is when you hear things like these, and you hear this in scales. Right? And so you need to practice an equal rhythm. And the second kind of thing you want to avoid is clusters of notes that are stronger and others weaker in terms of the strength of the note. So you can hear typically when you put the thumb, for instance, so 1, 2, 3, 1. So right? This you want to avoid as well. It's very interesting, and we'll cover this in a whole different video, to be able to have accents like this. Or maybe this is a good example. Right, you want to be able to do accents. And I have a whole little theory about this, but the point here is just to being able to also do none of them, right? And so practice it slowly and try to increase the speed. If you have problems typically with the sticking together, in the left hand it's harder. A good tip, and this works for all piano practice, it's the way I've been taught to practice these difficult places and pieces when you have a hand that does something difficult and you're supposed to play it fast. The way you work on this is you do it like this. You do long and then short, long. So you alternate between short and long notes. So it gives you like half of the notes with rests in between, and it's very efficient. So, and really try to do it well. So no. Okay, what's the time? No. Try to focus on So with a scale, it would be like this. So for instance, maybe let's take the left hand. You do, right? And of course, once you did long, short, long, you can do short, long, short. So, right? And you want this confidence in each finger. And of course, you can also do one long, two short, one long. You get the idea. This is a really useful thing to get this kind of regularity. And in my experience, it does work. So it's much faster to work like this than to just do and then slowly increase the speed until it works. So that's a good way to work on the first exercise. So first exercise, developing this strong attack, both rhythmically and in terms of the strength of the note. If you are bored with just doing scales, of course you can go to other scales. You can try to go to other melodies. So right, but do not start to mix too many things together, because if you have multiple difficulties and you fail, then you're not exactly sure what is the part you should be working on. But still, you can improvise on this, and it's really enjoyable to do just a simple improvisation based on scale. So maybe let yourself be inspired. Practicing scales with this attack, and that's already, if you can do this, it's very, very useful, both for just general Baroque music and also for improvisation. So work on this. It's the most important tip. You see variations of this exercise, by the way. It's always on developing this attack and its strength, but it's more than strength. So some people I've seen this exercise where people recommend to do this, right? I think it's exactly the same idea. I'm not exactly sure what fingering they are using, but it's this working attack. But always remember, and this is very important, that what you sound like is, yes, what you do, but it's also your intention. So sometimes if you need a note to be very soft, and you can't make it very soft, you just have the intention of making it very soft, and people understand that you want this note to sound soft. So here the attack, it's two things. It's the physical attack and it's the moral attack, the fact that you want to attack. So that's my point. Maybe exercise 1 prime. So again, this exercise, but an additional point on it about fingering. So here I was advocating playing scales. You can take 1 octave, you can do more, right? If you use a fingering, which is suitable for more octaves. But it is also helpful to practice this while you are at it, and you can practice scales. It is also helpful to practice this with stupid fingering. So very important, stupid fingering. Let's take 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, it works, but it would not be what is recommended in the books, right? No one would. And the reason you want to do this is because when you improvise, you just want to make it work. So if you want to go from here to here, and right, it's not, you don't have the time to think, okay, what is the optimal choice of fingers I can use to make it this comfortable? Okay, no, you have to do it now. There is no choice, right? And so, of course, in scores, people have optimized what is the best fingering, comfortable, or no, when you improvise, you don't have time for this fluffy stuff, right? It's just, you want to go from here to here, and let's make it work. And so, of course, sometimes you just have completely stupid fingering, but that's okay, you know. Again, it's the intention. You want to go from here to here, you will make it work, even if you have to do, right? It's still attacked, by the way, and relatively regular, right? Or I don't know, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. But here, of course, if I do 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, you kind of hear the accents, right? Here I'm showing you the accents, right? So very quickly, if you start to use weird fingerings, it's harder to make it both rhythmically and dynamically equal, right? So that's also a good practice. Exercise 1 prime, let's call it, changing the fingering on these simple scales. Okay, so now we can go to exercise 2, which is again a variation on this principle of you just want to make it work when you improvise. And so something that we have to do all the time, even in scale. So here, the scale is easy because it's very regular. You see, everything has the same spacing because it's all white notes. But if you do a different scale, even a simple one, just D major, right? You start having notes that are farther apart. Here you have to have your finger like this, right? And if you have this sizing here, you're probably going to play the wrong note. So your hand has to know these spacing. I mean, every pianist knows this, right? But you have to do it intuitively. You don't have time to work on the improvisation because you are improvising it, right? And so it has to work on its own. And so again, here you want to isolate, working on putting the fingers, you know, on the correct x-axis, if we say. I don't know if you want the correct position here, right? And so the way you do this, a way to work on this, is you take a chord. For instance, let's take, I'm tired of C major, let's take A minor, right? You take a chord, let's take the 4-note chord, so the octave, the 3rd and the 5th, right? And what you do is you just arpeggiate it, so like this, for the moment. Let's take this arpeggiation, so you do a chord and then, right, and you work on this. And again, it's not only about just doing this thing, it's working on your fingers from here to here. So the notes don't really matter. You could take something weird like, right, so it's quite difficult, right? You could take something weird, but you can also stay with simple chords. So I don't know, 1, you can do this. Come back these chords. But the real work is going from here to here. So similarly, you can also certainly practice with the left hand, but also work on different fingerings. So here, for instance, if I take the left hand, the question is, do I use a 3 or a 4? All right, so it might depend on your hand, it might depend on what chord you are taking, but let's try every weird thing. So let's try to always use 4. Here, not comfortable, but what am I doing? And you see, if you start to be sloppy like me here, you lose this quality of the sound that you are trying to work on in the first one. And do not do what I just showed you. So do not become sloppy, and always try to stay in control of each note, having this precise attack. So that's the gist of the second exercise, but there are a few things to say. So here, first, it becomes much more funny to improvise if you just want to practice this. So you can take really what we're doing. So and by the way, this is just a different way to arpeggiate. So of course you can arpeggiate differently. You can do, or you can do 1-3. Right, so all right, and with the left hand in both directions. But you will notice, maybe, if you start to improvise on these things, so maybe naturally, maybe because you've heard it here, these chords are very comfortable. So these chords, what I mean by these is stacking thirds. So it can give you sevenths, it can give you ninths, but stacking thirds, whether they are major or minor, it's very, very comfortable because it's easily shiftable, right? You can, so the transposition is an easy operation because you don't have to really change the shape of your hand much. If you compare this, if I stay with my shape, I get a different chord, right? So what we were working on was doing this and then this, right? Or if I use the same finger and not the fourth, I get this and then this, right? So you really have to work on going from here to here. But with these chords, you don't have to really change anything. You just stay in this thirds on thirds position. So on one hand, do not fall into the trap of easiness and just say like, oh, it's awesome, I can sound like Dracula and be doing clear. Right? Because if you do this all day, it's fine, but you're not really working on the on the difficult part. But do play with them and have fun, because it is useful for your hands to still know the positions of thirds, and that's we'll see this when we go to see counterpoint. Of course, thirds and sixths are very, very useful because so a sixth is just a third from below, right? And that's very useful because it's the kind of the easiest way to have counterpoint which sounds decent. You just play with thirds, and so if you know the position of the third, it will be easy to compute counterpoint kind of heuristically. So we were saying avoid always playing these chords, but do use them. Now they are useful. So if you just want to do something a bit stupid sounding, you can do a, if you want to think or relax, it is a way to fall into relaxed because there is no difficulty. It's just as dumb as the physical exercise is, right? So exercise 2, practice these chords, shifting the position, and I really try to play with it. So not only the 1 4 5 1 kind of the normal chords, try to do something. So I don't know. Because here you really have to stretch the hand more, and so that's good. And yes, the last thing that I want to mention with this is that it's also useful to see something that we'll come back to in completely different, it's a completely different topic, but it's good to be acquainted with this, is that a chord gives you the harmonic nature of what a chord is. I mean, it gives you, okay, 1, fine. And you typically have the assumption in harmony that you don't really care if it's played like this or like this, but by arpeggiating things, you start to decompose chords. Instead of considering chords as atomic, atomos, you can't cut them, you start to decompose them in their individual intervals, right? So if you arpeggiate like this, you start to hear 2/3 and a 4th in this chord. If you arpeggiate like this, you start to hear a 5th, a 3rd, and a 6th, right? And so you start to see that you can actually view these chords as a collection of intervals, and you view them a bit differently, and it can be useful to then because you see, from a chord like this, if you arpeggiate it, you can naturally transition from this to this, whereas if you consider just the atoms, the harmonic atoms, you do this, and it's a harsher transition than doing right, then being able to shift between chords with these intervals. So that's the second exercise. And the third exercise is a purely dumb exercise. And by the way, my hands are cold, so it's perfect because I learned it as a dumb warm-up, and I mentioned this before. It's just doing thirds. So again, useful to get acquainted with thirds, and you do thirds like this. So you can use both hands. It's much harder with the left, so work with the left, but do both, so you're equal. You do a third, and you oscillate here. So. You can also oscillate up, and you can put them together to get this. And so all together it gives you this. And of course now you have to shift. So we were doing this in C major, now we do it in D. That to get the qualities that we were working on with the first exercise, this attack, it's very difficult, especially in the left hand. These fingers, the last 3, are tough to convince to do the work for you. But so you'll notice that the chord is not really synchronous. It's you can have these accents that you do not want. So try to practice what we wanted in the first exercise, which is this regularity. But also don't completely lose your time with this, being able to do every one of these very quickly, very fast, because it's good, but it's not the whole point. So practice this within reason, because it's quite boring. It's good as a warm-up. And if you want to improvise based on this, it can help you. So for instance, if you take something stupid like 1 4 5 1 again, and you don't want to do something a bit like an introduction, you may, I don't know, let's take, let's do our little cadenza. Okay, let's be pedantic. this stupid little pattern, right? And with this exercise, you are used to replicating thirds with 2 fingers. So naturally, this will transition to let's do. Okay, if I didn't mess up, you know, you can use this as an introduction and then really improvise. It's also useful, this thumb exercise, to just being used to holding one part of the thing and moving the rest. It's I don't know why, but I think it does help with this, because you have to work on the synchronization of 2 sets of fingers and also kind of hold one part. It's tough to explain, but it's a well-rounded exercise. So in summary, the first exercise, the most important, work on this precision, because we'll really need this when we you don't want to think about these this is completely dumb. There is no invention and there should not be too much difficulty, right? So practice this. The second one is for this horizontal alignment of the fingers, stretching, and the third one is a dumb exercise. But if you start to do this, you can also just try to improvise technical improvisations that make use of these things. So combining really scales replicated, right? And maybe then this would be more the second exercise, right? Some this is sort of a replicated chord, and maybe even the third exercise with parallel thirds. Right? And so if you put all of this together, you can improvise these sort of. So what did I do? I did something like this. So let's assemble these pieces. Let me think a little bit. Okay, so you can do something like that. There's not much inventivity. It's just essentially a sequence of harmonic transition of the inventivity of cadenzas, which is 0, and harmonic circles. So really, there's nothing impressive here. It's just getting this thing, and if you can get the technical part, it will get much easier to improvise these things. So hopefully, try to practice these a bit, and also remember they are exercises, so it's good to do them. It's also good not to do them and also play real music. So yeah, keep a balance with this, but really try to work on loosening up your fingers, especially the left hand, because we are not used to doing these more technical things in the left hand. So work with this. If you have any questions or suggestions of other things that are useful to develop these touches, please put them in the comments. I'm very happy to have more suggestions. Very, very useful, because everyone is different. So when I was saying that an exercise like this, oscillating is good. I mean, it's good for me. But some people might tell me, right, well, okay, but it doesn't work for me. Then don't use it, right? Everyone is different. So hopefully this helps you, and we'll meet again soon for this mechanical way of improvising. So hopefully I can share a few tips on this as well. So see you soon, and enjoy, guys. Bye bye.